Hello everyone. So today we are back on the ground because I am going to be doing some computer work to try and negotiate with my building to lower our rent. I mentioned this in August's budget and how I was interested in doing it and how I've never done it before, and if anyone had any advice to give me as I go through this process. And there were a lot of comments with great pieces of advice. I've never done this before. This isn't a how-to video because I don't really know what the outcome of it is going to be, but I thought it was important to do this video, show you what many people suggested, because there were some key things that were suggested in the comment section, and kind of just encourage you to give it a shot, because you never know what can happen. The worst thing they can say is no. So definitely check out the budget video in the cards, because you can honestly just scroll and scroll and scroll. There's tons of people, like I said, with tips and stories about how they were able to lower their rent as well. But for me, the most direct and informative comment was actually from Anna Krupka, and I pinned her comment to the top so you'll be able to see it immediately. But again, take a deep dive in the comment section of my August budget video, because lots of great suggestions. So I kind of put together what I felt were the most commented suggestions that people recommended. So we're gonna just kind of go through them, and then I'm gonna write out my letter and send it. And then hopefully, it's Thursday now, so I feel like they might get back to me next week. Hopefully we have some good news to share. So the first thing people suggested was to just give it a shot. Someone who was in residential property management actually said that you should always negotiate, which I thought was really interesting. Most of the time, tenants kind of just take what they're offered. I've been doing that for, how long have I been living on my own? For 15 years. Never have I ever negotiated rent before. I just thought it kind of is what it is. And this will be, we've been in this complex for 2 years, and we've upgraded. If you guys remember, we had a 1-bedroom in the same building, and we upgraded to a 2-bedroom. So our rent will probably increase if we do renew. So I'm hoping at the very least it'll just not increase, but I'm actually asking for a hefty discount. Don't be afraid to push back. Worst case scenario, they say no. Best case scenario, you save some money every month, But in order to do this hopefully successfully is to make sure they see your value in you staying. What do you give to this property? Do you always pay on time? Do you keep your personal and communal spaces clean? If you have dogs, are they potty trained? We have a major issue in my apartment complex with dogs peeing on the carpets in front of the elevators. I don't understand it. Do you have renter's insurance? For me, for the past couple of years, renter's insurance has been a requirement to move into these big complexes. But if you're someone, I don't know about a mom and pop owned apartment or duplex or something, but that would also be a selling point. For Brian and I, like I said, we've been here for 2 years. We've paid consistently on time every month for the past 2 years, including during COVID, which I think is a selling point right now during this time. But also it benefits you to stay with them, because that allows them to save money that they would normally have to spend on marketing or cleaning this apartment. I've painted almost every wall and dug holes in every wall of this apartment. So they would have to pay someone to do that, because my deposit is not going to cover it fully. So having you stay is actually more beneficial to them. Consistency is something that they can't rely on. So if you're able to use those points, I think they're very important points to make. Number 3 is so important, and I'm so glad you all suggested it. And it's knowing your options and use them as leverage. So one of the commenters in that video, Jenny Chu, absolutely killed the negotiating game in New York, I believe. Or I might be thinking of another comment, but she killed it with her example. I've tried to heart and pin and like as many as like comments as I could. So again, just go to the video and scroll down, you'll see her comment. But look around at comparable apartments and see what they're charging. If you found similar or better apartments in terms of, like, I guess what it looks like and price, those are things that you have to talk about in your letter. I am lucky because there are 2 huge complexes like walking distance to my apartment complex, and I've looked at both of them. One of them actually has a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, which is what we have, that is $1,000 less than what we pay right now, which is crazy. And they're offering 8 weeks free rent. And then the other apartment, which is a newer build apartment, is something that we actually looked at before moving into this particular unit. Their 2-bedroom, 2-bath is similar in price to ours, maybe like $150 less. But they too are offering either 8 weeks free or 50% off your rent for the first 4 months. Obviously, those are kind of like move-in specials, but I'm hoping that once I bring those up, they'll realize that these are things that are directly, like, I can actually see both of the buildings outside my window, and they're in direct competition with keeping our tenant in our building. Plus, this is my bonus, like my bonus. If you've seen kind of like my home tour, I'll link those in the description box. You know that we have 2-bedroom, 2-bath, a balcony and a patio that's lovely, lovely, lovely. However, it's very hard to keep clean because of downtown LA and all this stuff. Anyways, there's only 2 units in our building that have this kind of layout with the balcony. And I asked my neighbor who has the exact same layout how much he pays, and he pays $150 less a month than we pay. So I feel just like going in with that knowledge, I can at least get our rent to lower to match his. You know, I think we're pretty good with our neighbors, so I wasn't actually shy to ask what they were paying. But that's something also I think you should do. What do your neighbors pay that have similar layouts to you? A tip, I wouldn't necessarily call this a tip, but more so like an observation. Number 4 is that people have admitted that it's easier to negotiate if you rent from a unit that's like privately owned versus a bigger management company, which is where we live now, because they might not be allowed to actually negotiate, which definitely makes sense. I mean, for me, our building, it's definitely corporately owned. It's a huge building, lots of units, but they weren't particularly helpful at all once COVID hit with rent forgiveness. I mean, they asked us if we needed help, that they could like defer rent. But for me, deferring rent doesn't help at all, because so what if I can pay $2,000 this month if I have to pay $6,000 in a couple months? That doesn't really make sense for me. It doesn't help. And I don't know. So I don't really know how this is going to go. I saw a couple comments from people that lived in maybe smaller apartment complexes or duplexes, and they had great success with negotiating their rent, just because, you know, maybe they know the owner or the landlord and it's just more of a smaller community, and being able to speak to the people one-on-one and sharing where you're coming from and maybe your struggles to paying rent, I think would absolutely go a longer way. I mean, I'm sending an email to a general email address, and that will probably get sent up the chain somehow. So I totally understand how it probably would be easier if you live in smaller complex or privately owned unit or complex to be able to negotiate rent. And then just as a side note, Paula was actually able to lower her rent by $150 a month using a template from apartmentguide.com. I'll go ahead and link that in the description box. And I'm going to kind of be using that guide that Paula talked about, as well as kind of tips from Anna to kind of write this rent negotiation situations, but something that I'm planning to put in my letter that wasn't necessarily mentioned. And I don't know, I feel like I probably should write it in there, but I don't know. But number 5 for me is that we have a lot of amenities that aren't, like, we're not allowed to be in. Obviously, pools and gyms are closed right now. And I had this whole conversation on my Instagram, actually. Like, if I were to have the same unit, but the unit was in a building with amenities and the unit was in a building without amenities, I am paying more to live in a building with amenities, right? Like, that's something that I believe is true. So I had this conversation with people on Instagram, and what did people say? And not to say that I'm like paying to use the facilities, but because my building is one that has facilities for me to use, like, I'm paying more. Oh yeah, 95% agree with me on that and 5% don't. So just the simple fact that, like, I can't go to the gym and work out, or I can't go to the pool and lay out for since March, I feel like if anything, that should also slightly reduce my rent. And then also, like, we obviously have an electric car, and the electric car charger hasn't been working for months. And we've been patient with people trying to fix it, and it hasn't worked, and we haven't gotten reimbursed for that yet. So if anything, maybe we'll get reimbursed for that. I don't know. So I'm going to say, in the most professional way possible, like, why am I paying for all this extra crap if nothing is working? Ultimately, like, you can do everything right, you can say all the right things, but whether or not they give you what you ask for is really up to them. So I sent it to a couple of my friends, and one of my girlfriends said I was being too nice. She basically said that I should just say, while we enjoy living here, the value of a unit has declined because of X, Y, and Z, and we could find a comparable unit elsewhere for cheaper. I mean, that's straight to the point, isn't it? I tried to, like, be a little bit more gentle. So yeah, I basically, like I said, used the template for the rent reduction letter, and the suggestion Anna said, her comment was kind of like in a conversational way, and I kind of just took all the talking points and put it in an email, so there wouldn't necessarily be too much conversation, just so they had all the information out there. So I don't know whether that's a good or bad thing, but that's what we're doing. Again, the $600 price that I'm asking for is basically the equivalent of having 2 months free rent, which is what every other building in my eye line is doing. So, okay. 3, 2, 1, send. Eee! I sent it. Okay. Where is it? Oh, here it is. The best offer we are able to extend is holding the current rental rate flat into a new offer, or into a new renewal. Another option to consider is transferring to another unit at a lower price. Please inform the office team what options works best for you, and they will facilitate. Thank you for your residency. Well, that's a bummer. So I'm sitting here doing work, and I started thinking about the situation and getting very mad about why they couldn't even price match our neighbors next door for the exact same unit, because again, we both have the huge patios. So I'm actually going to just toss another email just simply asking, why is my unit worth more than the exact same unit next door? Because I want to understand why a price match is not possible. So hopefully we'll at least get some reasoning behind their decision, which I think is only fair. So after I sent that email, there was a lot of back and forth. He said that we have a greater supply in the market currently, and the pricing model has lowered rates to gain traction, meaning that the moment I move out of this apartment, they're going to lower the rent because they have more empty units available than they have people interested in moving into the facility, into the complex. So I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, why don't you just lower my price so I can stay here? Unfortunately, we don't offer lower rates to current residents. And I totally get it. I mean, I think a lot of us didn't think that a big, corporation, leasing corporation would negotiate. I was hoping, at the very least, out of respect for me and how long I've been in this complex, that they would have honored what my neighbor pays for the exact same unit. I think I just feel a little disrespected, because you told me that you're going to lower this unit once I move out. And I know that my neighbor who has the same unit as me pays a lower price. So why can't you just work with me here? So option 1 is a 12 to 18 month lease at a monthly rate of $39.58, which is what we pay now. Option 2 is a 9-month lease at the rate of $39.58, which is the same. And then option 3 is a month-to-month lease at a monthly rate of $43.44. Brian and I still don't really know what we want to do yet. I think we would love to stay here, stay in LA, stay in this apartment, but we did just get back from Houston and we saw some really great options for significantly less. One of them was $1,000 less a month. So we're not really sure. We're at a crossroads right now. I was hoping that this would be kind of like a really cool video where I would be able to lower my rent negotiating with a leasing corporation, but that didn't happen. They did keep my rent as is, but that is not what I was looking for. So anyways, I still think the tips that I tried and the tips that you gave me are very, very beneficial. So I hope that you do take advice from this video, even though it did not work for me. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put the letter I wrote to the leasing company in the description box, so you can use that as, maybe just read it or use that as a starting point for your negotiations. And I just hope you have better luck than I did. Anyways, I miss you today and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye.